The man behind him, a Dominican in a black cowl, understands. His eyes gleam with a terrible, triumphant fire. He knows exactly what he's looking at. He sees the future you were trying to build, and he has come to burn it. Rough hands grab you, the wool of your tunic scraping against your skin. You are dragged from the room, from the light of your candles, from the accumulated wisdom of 1,000 years. As they pull you up the stone steps into the cold night air, you know they won't ask you about the Baphomet. The powerful have always underestimated this. They believe because you have nothing, you are nothing. They can't comprehend that the shadows they cast you into are the very places you build your own world, your own lines of communication. 1,000 years before encrypted apps, this was the signal boost for the silenced. A simple diamond shape scratched near a farmhouse means generous owner willing to give scraps. A zigzag line means vicious dog. A triangle? That means work available. If you don't mind mucking a stable for a stale heel of bread. You draw the swan-necked curve of the glass alembic, the belly of the flask where wine is heated, and the cold coil where its ghost, its spirit, condenses, drop by agonizing drop. This is distillation, a process so powerful it can pull the soul from a liquid. They call it alchemy. You know it by its real name, science. And in this world, science is a heresy punishable by fire. For an hour, you see nothing but green and shadow. The myth feels real. Maybe the woods are empty after all. Then you smell it. Not the clean scent of burning pine, but the acrid, controlled smoke of charcoal. It's a scent that means industry and a crime punishable by hanging. You drop to your stomach, crawling the last few feet to a ridge of brambles. Your fingernails scrape against a buried stone, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet. You peer through a gap in the thorns, and the world you thought you knew dissolves. It's not a camp, you are a memory. You are the living vessel of a knowledge so old it has no name, passed from mother to daughter, in whispered secrets over cooking fires and birthing beds. The girl on the pallet, no older than 15, writhes again. Her name is Amelin. Her husband is a tanner, a brute of a man who believes a difficult birth is God's punishment for a woman's sins. He does not know you are here. If he did, he would drag you to the priest himself. You freeze, your heart hammering against your ribs like a trapped bird. Standing at the edge of the alcove is Father Thomas, his face a mask of pious suspicion, his dark robes seeming to drink the light from the sky. He wasn't supposed to be up here. His eyes flick from Alaric's face to the chisel still in his hand, and then to the freshly carved stone behind the gargoyle's leer. He hasn't seen the sigil yet, but he saw the act. The Lord's work requires no secrets. Master Mason, he says, his voice dangerously soft. Skeletal remains from this period show a staggering 50 to 70% survival rate for trepanation, proven by the smooth, raised lip of bone regrowth around the wound. The skull didn't just get a hole in it, it lived and it healed itself. This wasn't butchery, it was fantastically successful surgery. This success is precisely why it had to be buried. It proved that practical, hands-on knowledge, passed down in secret from master to apprentice, was superior to the stagnant lessons. Theory-based medicine taught by the church-sanctioned universities. It showed that a common barber could save a life that a learned physician had condemned. You make the world forget that another way was ever possible. The real war is never fought with swords. It's fought over who gets to write the story, who gets to decide what is true. The door splinters, bursting inward in a shower of dust and iron. A man in the king's livery stands silhouetted in the doorway, his sword a black line against the torchlight. His eyes scan the room, passing over you, landing on the shelves. For a moment, you see confusion in his face. He was promised gold. He sees only books. The X means the Lord is cruel, his guards quick with their cudgels. Information, precious as bread. A week ago, a traveler, a fellow outcast you shared a ditch with for a night, told you to look for it. He was heading east. You are heading west. You will never see him again, but his knowledge keeps you alive. This is the beggar's code, the secret language of the invisible. 99% of people who ever lived would look at these marks and see only decay. The meaningless scars of time. They don't understand that for the oppressed, communication is survival. Outside, they whisper that this is a den of avarice, a fool's quest to turn worthless lead into royal gold. They are wrong. 99% of people will die believing that lie because the truth is infinitely more dangerous. You dip a quill into a pot of ink made from oak galls and iron salts. By the frantic orange light of the furnace, you copy the master's diagrams. They are not spells. They are schematics. Every hoot of an owl is a warning. You push deeper, the light fading under a canopy so thick it feels like a cathedral roof. This is the world as it was before man, and as it will be after. The forest floor is a soft carpet of moss and fallen leaves, silencing your steps. It's a trick of the mind, this silence. It's not empty, it's full of listening. You count your paces, following a map that exists only in your memory, a path shown to you in a hushed whisper by a dying man. 3 people knew the truth about your magic. 2 are now buried in cold, unmarked earth. You are the 3rd. The candle flame shivers, and your own shadow writhes on the damp stone walls, a monstrous black twin mocking your prayer for stillness. The air in this cellar is thick, clinging to your skin with the smells of sweat, fear, and blood. It smells of life, and it smells of death. The only sound, besides the frantic drumming in your own ears, is the low, guttural moan from the straw pallet in the corner. You are not a witch. They can burn our books, Alaric whispers, blowing the stone dust from the sigil. They can break our bodies, but they cannot unbuild this. We are encoding the universe into their churches. 1,000 years from now, when men have forgotten everything, the truth will still be here, waiting, written in stone. He looks at you, and in his eyes, you see the weight of this sacred, terrifying duty. A duty he is now passing to you. Suddenly, a shadow falls over you both. A sharp, disapproving cough cuts through the air. It is a functional anesthesia, a lost wisdom the university physicians, with their dogmatic faith in Galen's ancient texts, would call witchcraft. They prefer to bleed a man to the brink of death to balance his humors, a theory that has filled more graves than it has ever saved lives. You think this is a desperate, last-ditch gamble, a folk remedy that will surely end in death. But the modern world has been lying to you. The archaeologists who unearth these skulls, the ones with the perfectly round, healed-over holes, know the truth. You grab a single satchel, stuffing in a slim volume of Avicenna's medical canons and a rolled star chart. It's not enough. It's a single drop of water saved from a dying sea. You can hear them shouting now, the king's men, their voices thick with piety and violence. This is how progress dies. It's the same principle they'll use centuries from now. In sterile rooms with buzzing fluorescent lights, modern black sites and extraordinary renditions are born from this same dark impulse. You don't just neutralize the person, you seize the information they carry. You extinguish the idea. You are hunting for a secret, here on the back wall of the tannery, where the stench of curing hides can make a strong man gag. Your raw fingernail scrapes against the rough-hewn stone, the sound a dry whisper against the hiss of the rain. And then you find it. It's not random. It's never random. A small, hastily scratched circle with an X drawn through it. To the fat merchant who just passed you, it's a child's game. To you, it is life. The circle means the town. The lie they told the world was about gold. The truth, the one that got them killed, was about creating a new one. You are here in the heart of that secret. The air is a weapon. It's thick with the acrid bite of boiling vinegar, the sharp sting of what the master calls spirit of salt, and a strange, clean smell like the air after a lightning strike. Your lungs burn with every breath, a constant reminder that this room is a place of rebellion against God and nature. The village stench of human waste, wood smoke, and stale fear is gone, replaced by the sharp, clean scent of pine and the deep, wet breath of decay. It smells like freedom. A single step over this invisible line, this boundary marked only by a forester's notched tree, is a death sentence. Poaching the king's deer is worth more than your life. But you're not here for deer. You are here for a truth buried deeper than any root. The metallic taste of fear is a familiar communion wafer on your tongue. Every snap of a twig is a guard's footstep. His cold, dark eyes find yours, and you realize with a jolt of ice in your stomach that he saw your reaction. He saw the flicker of recognition, and he knows that you heard more than just a song. You heard a secret. It is the quiet signature of an underground network stretching across all of Christendom. A brotherhood of masons, alchemists, and astronomers embedding their knowledge into the very architecture of their oppressors. It's no different than a modern whistleblower hiding a key piece of data in a mountain of code, using the master's own tools to preserve a truth the master wants to bury forever. This is the secret that shatters the myth of an ignorant dark age, the one that proves a sophisticated, organized resistance was operating right under the Pope's nose. But he only breathes a slow, deep rhythm, lost in a slumber deeper than any you've ever witnessed. Here is the secret that changed everything. 99% of people believe medieval surgery was performed on screaming, conscious victims. They don't know about the dwale, the sleeping sponge. Before the first cut, you watched the surgeon hold a sponge soaked in a forbidden concoction to the man's nose. A carefully measured brew of henbane, mandrake root, opium poppy, and hemlock. A poison in the wrong hands, a miracle in these. The truth is the greatest intellectual heist in history. You are not just a monk with a sword. You are a guardian of a secret network, what the inner circle calls the husk sigil. Your banking system, the envy of Europe, doesn't just move coin, it moves people, scholars, translators, heretics, like ghosts, through the continent. Your fortresses don't just guard roads, they hide knowledge. They are servers of a forbidden internet made of parchment, leather, and blood. The bar on the door groans. Heavy, splintering impacts follow. They are using a ram. The metallic taste of fear floods your mouth. People see the shape of you. The slow limping gait, the hood pulled low, and their eyes slide away, pretending you are nothing but a trick of the light. They hear the hollow clack of your leper's clapper and cross the street, clutching their purses, their children, their very souls. They don't see your eyes, sharp and desperate, scanning the walls. They see a disease. You see a library. You drag your lame leg over cobblestones, slick with mud, and something worse. The smell, wet dogs, rotting vegetables, and human waste, clings to the air like a shroud. You begin to wonder what other secrets are hidden inside that little wooden box, and what other truths are buried under the cold stone floor. The greatest lie they told wasn't about the dragons or the sorcerers. It was about the trees. They want you to believe the deep woods were empty, haunted places for heroes to pass through. But 99% of people have no idea that the king's forest was the secret, beating heart of a revolution. You press yourself flat against the ancient oak, its bark a rough map of centuries against your cheek. The air changes here. They are still terrified. You might hear that forbidden note and remember a power you've forgotten you have. The minstrel's song fades, but the dissonant chord hangs in the air like a ghost. The tavern is silent. The way of forest goes silent when a wolf is near. The priest pushes his bench back, the wood groaning against the dirt floor. He rises, his shadow stretching across the room to swallow the musician whole. But he isn't looking at the minstrel. In the shadow it casts, he pulls a fine, sharp chisel from his belt. His movements are quick, precise, born of a lifetime of secret work. You hear it before you see it, an ASMR quality scrape against the stone, a dry, intimate sound of rebellion. Sk-kt. He is carving a small, familiar shape, a stylized seed husk, split open to reveal a single dot within. The husk sigil, a maker's mark that no bishop would ever recognize. He places it against the man's skull and begins to turn the handle. Then you hear it. Not a scream, not a plea for mercy, only a sound. A rhythmic, controlled scraping. Shkrr, shkrr. It's the sound of a metal drill against living bone. This is trepanation, a word you don't know, a procedure to release the demon of pressure that has been stealing the man's mind. You watch, expecting the man on the table to convulse, to scream his soul out into the cold, damp air. You hear the scrape of a boot on gravel from the courtyard above. A shiver, cold and sharp, runs down your spine. They are coming. You knew they would. The whispers from Rome, the greedy eyes of King Philip. They smell power, but they've mistaken its source. They think they're coming for gold. But this is not a treasury. It's a nerve center. The charge of heresy is the key, but the lock it opens is the door to this room. The official story will be devil worship and obscene rituals, a convenient fiction. 99% of historians will tell you the symbols you're about to see are meaningless folklore, a romantic myth. But what they don't want you to know is that the forgotten people of the medieval world built their own internet, and it was written in mud, shadow, and blood. The rain doesn't just fall on you, it attacks. Each cold drop is a tiny needle of misery, soaking through the thin wool of your tunic until it feels like a second skin made of ice. You are a ghost in your own city, and you realize, with a cold dread that sinks deeper than the horror of the boiling water, that the stolen ox was never the point. The point was Thomas. The point was his questioning of the tithe. And as they drag the weeping farmer out of the church and into the unforgiving light, you're left with a new, terrifying question. Last week, you saw the same priest wrapping the arm of the Reeves cousin, a man accused of a far worse crime, using bandages taken from the very same chest. His arm, they say, is healing beautifully. It despises the hand that offers bread without permission, the community that buries its own dead with forbidden rites. They call it heresy. We would call it humanity. You watch them melt back into the shadows, leaving behind that single crudely carved symbol in the mud, the husk sigil, a secret promise that even in the face of apocalypse, no one would be forgotten. But this promise was a death sentence, and the men who enforced that sentence were watching from the walls of the city, their torches burning like angry, hateful stars. They made you afraid of the very culture that gave you collective power. They needed your soul to be a blank page for them to write on, and they started by erasing the soundtrack of your past. It's an old war that's never ended. It's there today in the relentlessly homogenized and commercialized art that floods your senses, while authentic, challenging, or revolutionary voices are filtered out of the mainstream. The algorithms are the new priests, branding anything that feels too raw or too real as dangerous, making sure you only hear the safe, approved harmonies. We hide the golden ratio in the proportions of the nave and the Fibonacci sequence in the spiral of a stairwell. We build their temple using the pagan geometry of Pythagoras and the celestial mechanics of Ptolemy. We are hiding a library in plain sight. You feel a tremor of fear, a familiar cold knot in your stomach. Heresy is not just a word, it is the smell of burning flesh in the market square. Alaric leads you behind a grotesque, newly placed gargoyle. Its stone mouth frozen in a silent scream. Your tongue is coated with the metallic taste of fear. On a low wooden table lies a man from your village, his head shaved in a rough patch, his body unnervingly still. Standing over him is not a physician in velvet robes, but a barber surgeon, a man whose hands are as comfortable with a razor as they are with a saw. He is part of a secret you can only whisper, the husk sigil. He holds a tool that looks like a carpenter's brace, but at its tip is a circular, serrated blade. There are Jewish treatises on finance that make king's treasurers look like children playing with stones, and Greek scrolls of geometry that could build cathedrals to touch the heavens. This is the Templar treasure, a library of forbidden futures smuggled from the East. For 2 centuries, your brothers didn't just fight in the Holy Land. They listened. They learned. They absorbed the knowledge the West had burned and forgotten. This is the ultimate threat. Not an army, but a library that could spark the Renaissance 200 years before its time. But a new, heavier question settles in its place. If they buried this truth, what else did they force into the grave? It's the medieval equivalent of modern enhanced interrogation, a ritual of pain designed not to find truth, but to produce a desired outcome and enforce absolute obedience. It's a public spectacle of power, reminding everyone who watches, we can do this to you, and we can make it look like it was God's idea. The priest finishes his work, his face a mask of pious concern. He gives a small, almost imperceptible nod to the Reeve standing by the church door. It is not a cross, it is something else, a secret mark known only to them, the husk sigil. This is the evidence of an underground network, a conspiracy of compassion, fighting to give the dead the dignity the authorities ripped away. They were providing last rites when the priests had barred the doors, creating a record when the official chronicles had failed, offering grace in the heart of chaos. It's a story you'll recognize. Because power has always despised organized public action it cannot control. It was the sound of rituals performed in moonlit groves, harmonies that bonded a village together with a strength that had nothing to do with a cross. It was the frequency of a people connected. You follow him up the spiraling, treacherous stairs of a half-built bell tower. Below, the city is a smear of brown and gray, a tangled mess of wattle and daub fears. But up here, you are closer to the sky, closer to the truth. Alaric points to the rose window, still just a void waiting for glass. They will see the 12 apostles, he says. We see the zodiac. They see the Holy Trinity in our trefoils. We see the perfect, logical strength of the triangle. The sound they told you was torture was actually the sound of healing. The church buried the proof for centuries, letting you believe your ancestors were merely butchers and brutes. But in this cellar, the only thing being butchered is a lie. You are huddled in the corner, the damp stone leaching warmth from your back. The air is thick, a trinity of scents, the sharp tang of wine vinegar used to clean the tools, the sweet, earthy smell of a poultice simmering over a small brazier, and the coppery ghost of blood. The real Grail isn't an object, it's an idea. And this room is filled with them. Your gaze sweeps across the shelves. Here is the Almagest of Ptolemy, translated from an Arabic copy found in a dusty Damascus market. Its star charts so precise they feel like heresy. Beside it, the surgical texts of Al-Zarawi, detailing procedures for cataracts and the crushing of bladder stones with instruments that European physicians would dismiss as witchcraft. You can almost feel the fine steel in your hand. Imagine a world without blindness, a world without pointless agony. It's a chilling parallel to our own world. When an official system becomes too corrupt, too expensive, or too inaccessible, humanity will always create its own underground solutions. This desperate, forbidden ritual wasn't an act of evil. It was proof of a powerful human need for closure, a need so fundamental that people were willing to risk an eternity in hell, both for the one performing the ritual and the ones who watched. He leaves you in the quiet cottage, the air suddenly lighter, cleaner. It might have been rubbed with dirt, or soaked in vinegar and salt, or simply left in the damp cellar to gather mold. This is the bandage of the guilty. In 3 days, they will unwrap the arm. If it is healing cleanly, God has declared him innocent. If it is festering, blistered, and infected, as it almost certainly will be, God has declared him guilty. Thomas will be hanged. God had nothing to do with it. His fate was sealed not by the theft of an ox, but by the whisper of dissent. This is not a justice system. The air is cold, carrying the scent of damp soil and fear. A small group, moving in silence, lowers a shrouded figure into the ground. A woman slips a single silver coin into the dead man's palm. Passage for a journey the church says he cannot take. A young boy places a worn wooden token, a child's toy, beside his mother's head, a desperate anchor of identity in the great dark ocean of the plague. And then, one of them kneels. With a shard of slate, they scratch a symbol into a flat stone they place at the body's feet. What they don't want you to know is that the devil has nothing to do with it. This is the secret that changed the sound of the world. 99% of people will never learn that the church didn't ban this specific musical interval, the tritone, because it was unholy. They banned it because it was powerful. It was the cornerstone of the old music, the folk melodies your grandparents hummed before they learned to fear God more than winter. They believe this shape reaches for heaven, but the truth is, it distributes weight. It is a formula, an equation smuggled from the libraries of Baghdad, translated in the shadows of Toledo. A secret the caliphs understood 100 years before our kings could even write their own names. This is the first rule you learned. The church provides the faith, but the guild provides the knowledge. And 99% of the world, then and now, will never understand that these holy places are not just monuments to piety, they are stone hard drives of suppressed science. A heavy, rhythmic tread on the path outside, the splintering crack of a dry twig under a heavy boot. The woman's eyes meet yours, and in them you see a terror that has been passed down through generations. A sharp, authoritative knock rattles the flimsy door. A voice, smooth as a polished stone, but with an edge of iron, calls out. Not her name, yours. The candlelight flickers, making your shadow writhe on the curved stone walls like a captured demon. Outside, the night is unnaturally quiet. Too quiet. You press your ear to the heavy oak door, and all you hear is the frantic thumping of your own heart. A sound like a war drum counting down the last moments of an age. What they don't want you to know is that the story of the Templars was never about gold. 99% of the legends chase the gleam of the Holy Grail, a golden cup. But you know the truth. This is the secret 99% of people will never know. The truth the church fought a silent war to erase. The Sin Eater wasn't a heretic because he dealt in dark magic. He was a threat because he offered a service the church wanted to monopolize. He was the free market of the soul. He offered salvation without confession, closure without tithes, and passage to paradise for the price of a meal and a coin. He bypassed the entire spiritual and financial infrastructure of the most powerful institution on earth. But for a dissenter, a troublemaker like Thomas, who last month publicly questioned the tithe on his meager harvest, the water is made to rage with heat. The real deception, though, is in the priest's hands right now. It's in the bandages. There are 2 sets. One is boiled in clean water with mallow root and other soothing herbs, a poultice that aids healing and prevents infection. This is the bandage of the innocent. The other set, the one the priest is using now on Thomas's arm, was secretly prepared differently. They tell you this is a necessity, a way to cleanse the city to appease a wrathful God. Yet there is a truth hidden beneath the mud and lime that historians are only now uncovering. 99% of people don't know that many of these pits were not dumps, they were graveyards. Careful archaeology reveals bodies laid out with impossible care. You are there, in the dead of night, the moon a sliver of bone in the sky. The only sound is the wet thump of shovels in the dark, heavy earth. It's a harmony that's both broken and beautiful, and it makes the fine hairs on your arms stand up as if a cold wind just passed through the room. A deep, ancient part of you recognizes it, the part that has nothing to do with church bells or chanted Latin. It's a memory that doesn't belong to you, but to the blood in your veins. Across the room, a priest sours his ale with a scowl. His whips move silently, and you can just make out the shape of the words. Diabolus in musica, the devil in music. This is your world. A scaffold-webbed sky, the constant taste of stone dust on your tongue, and the weight of secrets heavier than any gargoyle. Alaric, the master mason, gestures for you to follow, his eyes, as gray and ancient as the granite he commands, darting toward the rising apse. He moves without a sound, a ghost in leather and wool. "Look," he whispers, his voice a low rumble that is swallowed by the cavernous space. "The priests see prayer, I see numbers. The numbers see God." He traces a line in the air, following the curve of a Gothic arch. It's the first thread you've ever seen of a hidden network, a pharmacopoeia shared in whispers from village to village, a quiet rebellion of healers keeping real knowledge alive against the onslaught of dogma. You now know that in other huts, in other forests, under other slivers of moon, others are doing the same. You are no longer alone in your quiet defiance. You clutch the remedies to your chest, the warmth of the pot, a small star against the cold night of your fear. But just as you turn to leave, a sound freezes the blood in your veins. The treasure they died for had no weight. It couldn't be melted down, couldn't be spent, but it could remake the world, and that was a sin no king or pope could ever forgive. You feel it now, in the deep cold of the preceptory vault. The air is thick with the sweet, dusty scent of aging paper and waxed leather, a fragrance more precious than any incense. Your fingers, stained with ink, trace the embossed leather of the codex that has no business being here. Not in France, not in 1307. And in that moment, a transaction more profound than any merchant's deal is complete. He has eaten the boy's sins. Every lie, every petty theft, every moment of youthful cruelty is now his. The boy's soul, unburdened and light, is free to ascend to heaven. The sin-eater, however, has just added another layer of damnation to his own wretched existence. He has become a walking vessel of other men's trespasses. He nods once, his face impassive, and accepts a single coin from the Father before melting back into the night. What you don't see, what no one is meant to see, are the instructions that priest received from his bishop, copied from clerical notes hidden for centuries until they were rediscovered in a dusty monastic archive. The notes reveal everything. They explain how to rig the game. For a man the church wishes to protect, the water is heated, but a thin layer of oil is floated on top, insulating his arm for a crucial second. Or it's simply not brought to a full, rolling boil. A primitive, terrifying, but stunningly effective form of a respirator, filtering the bad air, the miasma, you believe carries the sickness. In a world of prayer and penance, this is a shield forged from observation. But that is only the first secret the fog conceals. The second is buried deeper, in the earth itself. The church bells have stopped tolling. There are too many dead to count. The official story is that the bodies are taken by the cart, stripped of their dignity, and dumped into vast, open plague pits beyond the city walls. A final, anonymous horror. In the corner, a traveling minstrel, thin as a willow branch, with eyes that have seen too many roads, coaxes a melody from a worn-out viol. The tune is simple at first, a lament for a lost love or a bad harvest, something to numb the ache in your bones. But then he shifts his fingers on the neck of the instrument, and he plays it. The sound scrapes against the inside of your skull. It's two notes played together that feel like a ladder with a missing rung. A prayer that ends in a question. They told you this was a house of God, a monument built on faith alone. But what they don't want you to know is that the stones themselves are screaming a forbidden truth. You are standing inside the skeleton of a cathedral, a cavern of unfinished arches and raw, weeping limestone. The air, thick with the scent of damp earth and quarried rock, hums with the rhythmic chink, chink, chink of 100 chisels shaping the divine from the profane. Your own hands are raw, your knuckles skinned and bleeding from hauling rope and mixing mortar. She hands you the small pot of tea and a leaf-wrapped bundle of the poultice. She doesn't ask for coin. Instead, she presses a cold, rough finger to your lips, a silent command for secrecy. Then, with the same finger, she draws a simple shape in the dirt floor. A seed pod, split open, with a single dot inside. She whispers a phrase that sounds like a prayer, but isn't. Husk sigil. It's not a spell, it's a password. And now that he has been found, you have to wonder, how many other bodies are lying in museum display cases, labeled as Iron Age sacrifices, who are actually the victims of a secret, brutal medieval justice? They didn't just bury a body, they buried a timeline. And the bogs are finally giving up their dead, revealing a past written not in ink, but in perfectly preserved blood. You hear the scrape of the man's fingernails, long, yellowed, and dirty, as he lifts the crust of bread from the cold flesh of the boy. He puts it in his mouth, and the sound of his chewing is unnervingly loud in the sacred silence. It's the dry, grating crunch of stale rye, a sound that feels like it's grinding away the very foundations of the world. Then he lifts the bowl. The ale sloshes, a dark mirror reflecting the guttering flame. He drinks it down in one long, wet gulp, his throat working. "I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request." The air outside is thick with the sweet, cloying smell of death. But inside this leather prison, the world is different. Your breath is hot and close, smelling of the crushed herbs packed tightly into the beak. Mint, sharp and clean. Cloves, spicy and warm. Camphor and lavender. We know now these botanicals have antiseptic and, more importantly, insect-repelling properties. You don't know the science of it, but you know the stories. You know that the perfume makers, the men who lived their lives steeping in these oils, rarely fell ill. This mask is not a costume, it's a hypothesis. The most dangerous weapon in the Middle Ages wasn't forged from steel. It was crafted from silence and sound. And the man playing it now is risking more than just his life. You're hunched over a wooden cup in the corner of a tavern that smells of wet dog and stale beer. The air is a thick, greasy fog of sweat and wood smoke, so heavy you can almost taste the conversations of the men around you. A fire spits in the hearth, casting long, dancing shadows that make the familiar faces of your neighbors look like hungry ghosts. And in his eyes, you see not a man of God, but a gatekeeper who just realized someone has found a key to a forbidden door. The fire is out, but you are now the one who is marked to be burned. If a common woman with common weeds can do what a bishop with a holy relic cannot, the entire scaffolding of power begins to tremble. It's a chilling parallel, isn't it? The way knowledge that empowers the individual is so often branded as dangerous by the institutions that hold the official narrative. The herbalist is a heretic. The modern-day nutritionist questioning corporate food systems is a quack. The story is the same. Only the costumes have changed. The struggle is over. Who owns the truth? And who owns your body? The woman finishes her work. Endeth. "I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request." He is gaunt, wrapped in rags, his eyes holding the hollowed-out look of a man who lives with the dead. He is the sin eater, an outcast. To touch him is to be defiled. To speak to him is to invite bad luck. But to hire him, that is to risk your own soul for the sake of another. He doesn't speak. He glides to the body, his movements silent and practiced. The mother lets out a sob, a sound like a frayed rope snapping, and buries her face in her hands. A whimper escapes his lips as they force his right arm forward, over the rim. You can see the pale, chapped skin of his forearm, the dirt under his fingernails, and then he plunges it in. The sound is one you will never forget. Not the scream that is ripped from Thomas's throat, a raw animal noise of pure agony. No, it's the other sound. The soft, wet sizzle as his skin meets the water. It's a sound that smells of cooking meat and burning hair. The crowd gasps as one, a single, horrified lung. Your heart hammers a frantic rhythm against your ribs, a drumbeat of pure animal terror. This is the angel of death, the scavenger who follows the scent of decay. This is the face of the plague. That is the story you have been told, and 99% of the world still believes it. But what they don't want you to know is that this symbol of ignorance was one of the most brilliant, desperate acts of applied science in a world consumed by superstition. Lean closer. Imagine you are the one behind the glass-eyed mask. The Lord's Reeve was seen talking to men with maps, his voice a low poison on the wind. The meal in your belly suddenly feels less like a rite and more like a stolen memory from a future that is already closing in. The crowd roars its approval as the last book is consumed, but you are silent. Your secret knowledge feels like a physical weight, a hot coal in your gut. As the people begin to disperse, their faces filled with righteous fear, you feel a gaze settle upon you. Across the square, through the shimmering heat and dying embers, the priest is looking directly at you. There is no piety in his eyes now, only a flat, reptilian stillness. He saw you in the cellar. He knows you saw the pages. Recent analysis of residue scraped from the inside of medieval pottery like this has uncovered the unbelievable. Complex herbal poultices containing mold cultures, penicillin's ancestor, 1,000 years before Alexander Fleming. 99% of people believe medieval medicine was just leeches and superstition. But here, in this hut, is the proof they're wrong. The woman scrapes a blue-green fuzz from a piece of damp bread kept in a dark corner, mixing it with crushed yarrow and honey. This isn't a prayer, it's a prescription. This is a direct threat to the church's monopoly on miracles. Or the local lord, a convenient way to eliminate a rival, a heretic, or an inconvenient witness. No trial, no record, no trace. Just a body given to the bog, where everyone would assume it was the work of ancient ancestors. It's the perfect cover-up, a way to use history as a weapon, to make an execution look like an archaeological curiosity. You can hear the squelch of his body being forced down into the peat, a last bubbles of air rising to the surface before the brown water stills over him, sealing a secret for centuries. On a rough-hewn table in the center of the room lies a boy, his skin the color of tallow wax in the flickering candlelight. A crust of dark bread rests on his still chest, and beside it, a shallow bowl of ale. There is a knock at the door, a sound not of wood on wood, but of bone rapping against oak. The father unbars it, and a creature from the edge of the world slips inside. He is not a priest. It's a masterpiece of psychological theater. And the priest is the director, the stage manager, and the lead actor. The heat from the brazier warms your face, even from here. You hear the scrape of Thomas's coarse tunic against the stone floor as he rises. Two grim-faced men, aides to the local reeve, seize his arms. They drag him toward the cauldron. The priest makes the sign of the cross over the bubbling water. In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Thomas's eyes screw shut. The silhouette that stalks your nightmares is a lie. What they want you to fear is the one thing that might have saved you. Through the clinging wet fog that smothers the street, it comes. A shape from a fever dream, black and absolute against the gray. The long, waxed coat that repels not just the rain, but the touch of the dying. The wide-brimmed hat casting a shadow where a face should be. And the mask, that monstrous bird-like beak. You shrink back into the doorway, the rough wood splintering against your palm. The taste of a world that is still, for a few more moments, yours. You look across the flickering fire at the faces of your family, their eyes reflecting the flames. You are poor, yes. Your life is hard, yes. But tonight, you are not hungry. Tonight, you are free. But as you swallow, you feel a cold knot forming in your gut that has nothing to do with the food. There are whispers in the village, rumors of new fences, of stone markers being driven into the earth of the common woods where no marker has ever stood. And the most chilling part isn't the history unfolding before you. It's the sudden cold recognition of the same pattern in your own distant future world. The fire has simply changed its form. They don't need pyres when they can bury an algorithm. They don't need to burn books when they can shadow ban an account. When they can label data that challenges the official narrative as misinformation. The goal has never changed. To control the boundaries of what you are allowed to know, to make you dependent on the narrative they provide. What they don't want you to know is that the war on witchcraft is not about spells and Sabbaths. It's a war on this room, on this woman, on the simple earthly power she holds in her hands. It is a war on folk medicine and the independence it grants you from a system that profits from your powerlessness. She gestures to another bowl, and this is the secret that could get you both burned. A performance for the future. They didn't just hide a body, they hid it in the wrong millennium. Imagine the sheer cold-blooded cunning. To commit a crime so perfectly that its true nature wouldn't be discovered for nearly 1,000 years. Why? The question hangs in the air, heavier than the bog mist. Was this the work of a hidden pagan enclave? A community that never truly gave up the old ways, dispensing a brutal pre-Christian justice under the nose of the local priest? Or is the truth even more chilling? Perhaps it was the priest himself. The church promised you salvation, but they never told you it had a competitor. In the deepest shadows of faith, a darker, older ritual persisted. A service so powerful they had to hunt its practitioners, burn the records, and promise eternal damnation to anyone who even whispered its name. The air in the cottage is thick, heavy with the sweet, cloying smell of death and crushed rosemary. You stand in the corner, a ghost in your own memory, watching a family shrink into the shadows of their own grief. If this man be innocent, God shall cool the waters. He shall protect his faithful servant from the fire, and his flesh shall be made whole. You watch Thomas's lips move in a silent, frantic prayer. He believes it. Everyone here believes it. This is the ordeal of hot water, a sacred pact between man and the Almighty. But 99% of the people crammed into this church will live and die without ever learning the truth. That this isn't a trial of faith, not the wind, not a rat in the thatch, a heavy, deliberate fist pounding on the cellar door. Your blood turns to ice water in your veins. They know. The husband, the priest, someone saw you slip through the alley. Isolde fell, Marjorie burned with fever, and now they have come for the third. The vibrant ecosystem of your plate, the wild game, the foraged greens, the fish from the stream, will be replaced by a monoculture of gruel and dependency. It's the same lie they will tell 1,000 years from now, that the factory farm is superior to the smallholding, that the industrialized, chemical-soaked megacrop is better than the food you can grow with your own 2 hands, that you need a master to feed you. You dip the heavy bread into the stew. The savory heat floods your mouth. It is the taste of independence. Each book that turns to smoke is a link in the chain that binds your village to the Lord's land and the priest's dogma. They are burning your children's future food. They are burning your chance to survive the next winter without begging. The smell of burning books is the smell of manufactured ignorance. It is the smell of control. And in that moment, a horrifying clarity descends upon you. They created the Dark Ages because they were terrified of the light. It was intellectual warfare, a systematic demolition of self-sufficiency. An old woman, her face a map of seasons you can't even imagine, doesn't look up as you enter. Her hands, stained with berry juice and dirt, are her language. You watch her work, and the world outside, the world of prayer and plague pits, falls away. You hear the shh, shh of a small, sharp knife shaving thin, white curls from a branch. It's an ASMR quality sound, a whisper of healing that feels more sacred than any psalm. She is making the tea, the forbidden remedy that actually cools a fever. This is the knowledge they want to bury. The husk sigil is a ghost of history, a haunting reminder that every freedom you have was born from a secret whispered in the dark, from a truth someone died to protect. They manufactured the Dark Ages to hide the power of the common person. They sanitized the past to control the present. They lied about then. What else are they lying about now? This is not a sacrifice. This is a murder. You can almost feel the cold dread that settles in the pit of your stomach, the same dread you feel when a familiar floorboard creaks in an empty house. This isn't a holy man given to the gods. This is a medieval cold case. Someone in the 14th century, someone who knew the Christian God and the king's law, chose to kill this man and bury him in a way that mimicked an ancient pagan rite. The noose, the bog burial, it was all a deliberate act of historical forgery. The only sound is the bubbling of acid. He is staring directly at you, his face unreadable in the flickering light. He saw where your hand was. He knows that you know. He speaks, and his voice is low, barely a whisper above the furnace's roar. The work protects its own, but a secret, once shared, becomes a liability. The bubbling in the flask no longer sounds like discovery. It sounds like a timer, counting down the seconds you have to prove you are not a threat to the most dangerous secret in the world. It hisses, a low, constant sound that worms its way into your gut. Your own breath feels shallow, trapped in your chest. The man kneeling before the altar, a farmer named Thomas, is accused of stealing his neighbor's only ox. His face is a mask of terror and desperate faith, his eyes fixed on the priest as if the holy man were God himself. The priest, a man whose soft hands have never known a day of labor, raises a crucifix. His voice, smooth and practiced, fills the stone silence. "Let the Lord God be the judge," he intones. You work quickly, your hands a blur, cutting the cord with a small, sharp blade you sterilized in the candle flame. You clean the infant, a girl, her skin slick and pale in the flickering light. You place the baby on Ameline's chest. The young mother is weeping, tears of agony transformed into tears of overwhelming relief. For a single, beautiful second, there is only peace. The quiet thump of the newborn's heart against its mother's. The soft, exhausted breathing in the near dark. You allow yourself one breath, a deep, cleansing breath. Thump, thump, thump. A sound from above. An improvement. It is economic warfare disguised as agriculture. It is the first great lie that allows a handful of men to own the world and to convince everyone else to be grateful for the crumbs. They need you to believe you were starving, so you will thank them for the cage they are building. They will tell a story of efficiency, of higher yields, but what they won't say is that this efficiency will lead to a catastrophic collapse in your health. The priest throws the book into the flames. You hear it, a soft, final sigh as the leather cover curls and blackens. Then comes the sharp crackle, an almost human shriek as the pages catch. For a second, you can see the ink bubbling on the parchment, the ghost of a drawing of a crop rotation system, a key to breaking the cycle of famine, glowing like an ember before dissolving into a cloud of gray ash. Your skin crawls. This isn't an execution of ideas. It's a murder of possibility. The holy water has done nothing but make her shivering skin feel colder. So now, under a sliver of moon, you seek the second scent, the forbidden one. You are in a hut that leans against the forest's edge like a tired old woman. The air inside is a tapestry of smells the priest would call demonic. Damp earth, drying mushrooms, and something sharp, clean, and medicinal that cuts through the fog of your fear. This is the scent of willow bark, simmering in a small clay pot over a low fire. You shiver, but not from the cold. You shiver because you realize this war isn't over. It only evolved. The same forces are at play today, waged with weapons of silicon and code. The war on misinformation is the new witch hunt. The control of big pharma and big ag is the new enclosure of the commons. The censorship by big tech is the new book burning. The strategy is identical. Discredit and destroy any decentralized knowledge that empowers you. And you will learn to need their authority to tell you what is true. In a sterile lab, far from the whispering reeds of the bog, a tiny fragment of his skin is vaporized by a machine that counts atoms. Accelerator mass spectrometry. It isn't magic, but what it reveals feels like a profane resurrection. The date comes back. Not 300 BC, not the age of Celtic warriors and druids. The date is 1325 AD, the High Middle Ages, the age of soaring cathedrals, armored knights, and the Inquisition. This man saw stone castles. He heard church bells. He died while Dante was writing his Inferno. And this changes everything. A stylized sheaf of wheat, but hollowed out, empty. The husk sigil. a sudden realization floods you with a cold dread that has nothing to do with the chill from the floor. This room, this laboratory, it is not the only one. The sigil is a mark of a network, a hidden brotherhood of minds stretching across the continent, from the cellars of Prague to the towers of Toledo. They are not lone madmen. They are a conspiracy of knowledge. You pull your head from under the table. Your eyes wide. The master has stopped working. The water does not boil for God. It boils for the priest. What they don't want you to know is that in this age of faith, divine justice has a secret, human price, and it is paid in scalded flesh and broken will. You stand packed, shoulder to shoulder, in the nave of the church, the air thick with the smell of damp wool, unwashed bodies, and the sharp, metallic tang of fear. Sunlight struggles through a high, narrow slit of a window, a single dusty beam illuminating the steam rising from a black iron cauldron set over a glowing brazier. For your life, the air crackles with a terrible, sacred energy. This is the true nexus of power, not in a king's throne room or at a bishop's altar, but here, in the dark, with two women fighting together against the void. A sharp, tearing cry, more animal than human. Then another sound, a wet, slick, slithering sound that is the sound of life itself. A moment of impossible silence hangs in the air, heavy as a shroud. Then, a thin, wavering cry fills the small space. A healthy cry. They buried the truth of your plate in the same way they buried your bones, without a name, without a story. But archaeologists, digging through the filth of your cesspits, your garbage dumps, found the evidence. They found the bones of fish and fowl, the seeds of fruits and herbs, the remnants of a diet so diverse and nutritious, it would shame the processed food of a future you cannot even imagine. This is the forbidden knowledge. Before they stole the land, you ate better than your descendants would for centuries. The enclosure of the common lands, they will call it progress. It was a diagram, elegant and precise, of a new type of gear for a watermill, one that could double the output of flour for the village. Another page showed the phases of the moon, with notations for planting cycles that didn't rely on the church calendar, the one that ensures the tithe is always collected on their schedule, not yours. You've heard the whispers of old knowledge, of a time before the Lord's grandfather, when people understood the earth and the sky in a way that made them free. This is the evidence. The first scent is holy. The second is a death sentence. You smell the Holy One first, clinging to your clothes from the morning's desperate prayers. It's the scent of frankincense, thick and cloying, a perfumed shroud attempting to mask the sweet, sick odor of decay that haunts your village. It's the smell of hope, paid for in coin to a priest whose hands are clean and whose God offers miracles only to the worthy, the patient, the obedient. But patience has run out. Your daughter's fever hasn't broken. This sigil was the map of a living network, a decentralized peer-to-peer system of human beings sharing practical, life-saving information. The healers, the masons, the foresters, the secret keepers, they were all nodes in a web of resistance against centralized power. And so they buried it. They buried it under a mountain of propaganda they called the Dark Ages. The witch hunts, the inquisitions, the book burnings. It was a brutal, centuries-long war to destroy this network, to atomize communities, and to make every soul on Earth dependent on a small, powerful elite for its survival and its salvation. Around his neck, a tightly wound cord of horsehair bites deep into the flesh. The archaeologists whisper their familiar, comfortable story. Iron Age, a ritual sacrifice to a forgotten god of the bog, a man given to the earth to ensure a good harvest. It's a story that places him thousands of years away, making his violent death a piece of distant, alien anthropology. A specimen. That's what they want you to think. That's the lie. But 99% of people don't know that new technology is making the dead speak the truth. The master curses under his breath, his face slick with sweat in the furnace glow. He sends you for a heavier crucible from beneath the large oaken work table. You crawl into the darkness on the cold, damp stone. Your hand searches for the thick ceramic pot, but your fingers brush against something else. Wood, carved. You trace the shape in the darkness, etched deep into the underside of the table, where no one would ever look. It's a symbol you've seen before, hidden in the margins of the master's most secret texts. A twig snaps directly behind you. Your heart stops. You don't dare turn. A voice, low and rough as bark, speaks so close you feel the warmth of its breath on your neck. You are either very brave or very stupid to come here uninvited. The king's men lose their eyes for looking at what is not theirs. What do you think we take? They have reframed female empowerment as a satanic conspiracy because a woman who can control her own womb is a woman who cannot be fully controlled by the state or the pulpit. The same pattern of discrediting and legally attacking women's healthcare providers echoes even now, a modern witch hunt waged in courtrooms and legislatures instead of torchlit cellars. Your fingers, stained with the green of crushed herbs, are gentler than any physician's. You check Ameline's progress, your touch both clinical and comforting. You feel the baby's head finally turning. You whisper, "Now, child, now you must push." You hear the soft, wet tear as you pull a piece from the loaf, the crust 1,000 tiny crackles against your calloused fingertips. This isn't the bread of kings, bleached white and soft as sin. This is the bread of survival, the bread of the earth, and it is yours. This meal is a secret history, a rebellion simmering in an iron pot. What the story of progress requires is a miserable past, a past so bleak and starved that any change, any advancement, feels like a mercy. 99% of people, then and now, believe this is about saving souls from forbidden gospels and demonic texts, a necessary, righteous fire. But you were the one who helped the Inquisitor's clerk haul the confiscated crates from the old weaver's cottage. In the damp cellar, by the light of a single tallow candle, a binding came loose. A page slipped free. You saw it for only a moment, but the image is burned into your mind more permanently than any holy scripture. It wasn't a prayer to Lucifer. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. The single stalk of wheat isn't an offering. It's the simple, world-shattering power of agricultural independence. The three roots digging deep into the earth aren't hellish claws. They are the sacred trinity of folk knowledge: how to heal the body, how to build a shelter, and how to resist those who would own you. And the circle. 99% of people believe it's the sun, a pagan idol. But you see the truth. It isn't the sun. It's the confining wall of the church and the state. And the wheat of knowledge is breaking right through it. The man in the bog has been lying to you for 800 years. And the lie was the last thing that killed him. You see him emerge from the peat, pulled from the dark, acidic water that has held him in its perfect embrace. The air, sharp with the smell of wet earth and decay, chills your skin. He is impossibly preserved. His skin is the color of tanned leather, stretched tight over a frame that remembers life. His hair is rust red. His fingernails are manicured. The stubble is still rough on his chin. It's the same lonely struggle of a modern scientist in a basement lab, ridiculed by established institutions for a paradigm-shifting theory, scrambling for funding while knowing their discovery could save millions. The tools are different: glass beakers instead of computers, charcoal furnaces instead of particle accelerators. But the burning hunger and the terror of being silenced is exactly the same. You feel it now, a cold knot in your stomach, the fear that a sudden knock on the door isn't the baker with bread, but the Inquisition with torches. Tonight, the work is difficult. A new mixture is unstable. Carved into it is a symbol, a spiral made of what looks like dried wheat husk. The husk sigil. 99% of people, even the most learned historians, have never heard of it. It was the physical key to a network of knowledge, a way to pass information, coded messages, and forbidden texts from one forest enclave to another, a web of descent stretching across the kingdom. They built the world's first dark web, not with wires and code, but with root, mud, and sworn secrets. These forests weren't just a refuge. They were a library, a university, a conspiracy. Every gust of wind rattling the shutters is the priest's bailiff. In your satchel is a small, smooth river stone, worn down from the desperate grip of 100 laboring women. You press it into Ameline's hand. You murmur to her, not a prayer to the Virgin, but the ancient words of encouragement, the breathing patterns that sync a mother's body to the rhythms of the earth. These techniques, this wisdom, are now capital crimes. The Church has declared them demonic. You caught it yesterday, not on the Lord's land, that would mean the gallows, but in the tangled briar patch that belongs to everyone, and therefore to you. Into the pottage goes the rest, onions and leeks from your own small garden, their sharpness mellowing into sweetness. A handful of dried peas saved from last year's harvest to thicken the broth. A small river fish caught by your son, its silver skin now lost in the rich, bubbling stew. You reach for the bread. It's dark, dense, and heavy with rye. The sweet, choking smell of burning parchment isn't the smell of blasphemy. It's the smell of a carefully constructed lie, a secret they sealed with fire and ash for 800 years. You stand in the freezing mud of the town square, the heat of the pyre, a false warmth on your face. The priest, his face a mask of piety in the flickering orange light, raises another book for the crowd to see. His voice booms, a litany of heresy and damnation, but his eyes are cold. Dead things. You know the truth. You saw the list. By the end of this journey, the secret Ilara died for will be burned into your mind, and you will never trust the sanitized version of history again. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. The final haunting secret isn't what the husk sigil meant, but that it never went away. You stare at the etching, the flicker of the torchlight making it seem to writhe on the cold stone. You finally see it, not as a symbol of demonic worship, but as a declaration of human freedom. a truth so dangerous they had to bury it under 1,000 years of fear. What they don't want you to know is that this was never about God or Satan. It was about control. And beneath that, another mark, one you've never seen before, a broken, jagged line pointing down toward the old grated well in the center of the forgotten courtyard. The well they warn you never to go near. The well from which a strange metallic smell sometimes rises on hot days. The safe place isn't a barn. The message isn't about shelter. It's a warning and a summons. And you realize, with a terror that hollows out your stomach, you are not the one reading the message. You are the message. This is the great, terrifying secret of the alchemist. They weren't trying to transmute lead into gold. They were trying to transmute humanity from an age of faith into an age of reason. This work feels like a prayer to a God that doesn't exist yet. The God of evidence, of repeatable results, of knowledge earned through burnt fingers and smoke-filled lungs. It's a pursuit that mirrors the quiet desperation of every great thinker born too early. You see a woman passing a bundle of herbs to another, not for cooking, but for preventing childbirth, a secret the church would burn them for. You watch two men hunched over a piece of slate, one teaching the other to read. And then you see it, the secret that changed everything. A newcomer arrives at the edge of the clearing, a lean man with the wary eyes of a refugee. He's met by a woman who holds up a hand, not in greeting, but in challenge. The man reaches into his tunic and produces a small, flat disc of wood. It was a war on knowledge. A new, terrifying analysis of the Inquisition's own trial records reveals a pattern they tried to bury for centuries. Over 80% of the accusations leveled against women were not for flying on brooms or cursing the village well. They were for healing, for midwifery, for daring to practice a medicine that did not come from a university-trained man spouting Latin and wielding a bloodletting knife. This wasn't a panic, it was a purge. You listen. Every creak of the floorboards above is a footstep. 99% of the people who will ever live after you will believe this lie. But what they don't want you to know is what's really in the pot. You can smell it now, the steam curling up to meet your face, carrying the scent of wild thyme and savory, the deep, earthy perfume of mushrooms you gathered this morning from the damp floor of the common woods. A rabbit, fat from a summer of feasting on clover, bubbles away, its meat falling from the bone. Silver isn't for medicine. It's for coin, or for a blade meant for something a man believes is not entirely human. The surgeon gestures to a small hidden mark on the patient's wrist, a mark you now see on his own hand. And with dawning horror, you remember touching it on your own father's cold body just a year ago. The husk sigil. It's not just a secret society, it's a bloodline. And the priest knows. What they don't want you to know is that this symbol is the key. Historians call this the Dark Ages to hide the truth. It wasn't dark from a lack of knowledge, but from its systematic extermination. A recent dig in a Lubeck plague pit found bodies not thrown in haste, but arranged with specific herbs. Herbs the church had banned as witchcraft. That wasn't chaos. It was a cover-up. The fear they manufactured then is the blueprint for the fear used today to suppress inconvenient truths. And your silence will determine whether the night lasts for 5 years or 500. You turn into the alley behind the church, the one place even the priests pretend not to see. And that's when your blood freezes, a colder shock than any raindrop. There, carved into a loose brick, is the mark you are hoping for. A small square, meaning a safe place to sleep. But something is wrong, terribly wrong. Below it is a newer symbol, one whispered about in hushed tones from York to Genoa. A triangle with a single unblinking eye scratched in the center. Inquisitor. He's here, hunting heretics, or perhaps just hunting the weak for sport. They don't see the real treasures being forged in this furnace. Not gold, but knowledge. The master takes a piece of iron and drops it into a bubbling, clear liquid. The metal screams, dissolving into nothingness with a violent hiss. He has created an acid so potent it can unmake the world. He has combined copper and tin to create bronze alloys stronger than any blacksmith has ever forged. These are secrets that don't belong to mystics. They belong to engineers, to chemists, to the architects of a future no pope or king has ever imagined. This isn't a desperate hideout for a few starving outlaws. This is a thriving, organized counterculture. This is active resistance. Recent archaeology has found the post holes and refuse pits of settlements, just like this, proving what the official histories tried to erase. The original sovereign citizens didn't write pamphlets. They simply walked away from the king's law and built their own world in his backyard. They trade in things the realm forbids. Cured meats from poached animals. Yes, but also knowledge, a degree of control over the one thing she is supposed to cede to God and her husband, her own body. This is the most dangerous secret of all. This is the secret that killed Isolde, who fell down a flight of stone steps last autumn. It's the secret that gave Marjorie a fever that took her in a single night, her lips stained black. What 99% of people will never understand is that the Great War on witchcraft was never a war on Satan. It was a targeted, systematic extermination of women like you. The greatest lie ever told about your life isn't about kings or castles. It's about what's in your bowl. The fire is a fist of warmth in the dark heart of your cottage. Outside, the wind whispers through the thatch, a hungry sound, but in here, there is only the patient, rhythmic thump, thump, thump of your knife on the chopping block. Your stomach, hollowed out by a day in the fields, answers with a low growl. You've been taught to picture this moment as a portrait of misery, a scene of gray, watery gruel, of gnawing hunger and despair. There is a faint sigh from the patient, a release of pressure, both physical and metaphysical. The surgeon works quickly now, cleaning the opening, his movements economical and sure. He looks up and his eyes, the calmest eyes you have ever seen, find yours in the flickering candlelight. He doesn't speak of the patient's chances. He speaks of something else. The priest who denounced this man as demon-possessed. He whispers, his voice like dry leaves skittering on stone. He was seen leaving the apothecary's guild last night. He didn't buy herbs. He bought silver. Your blood runs cold. You step outside, the cold morning mud squelching between your bare toes. The cottage of your neighbor, Alara the midwife, is silent. Her door is shut. Yesterday, the Lord's Reeve visited her, his face a mask of cold piety, his words like chips of ice. Now she is gone. Scratched into the dark wood of her door is a symbol you have been taught since birth to fear. A circle, broken by the stalk of a wheat shaft, its 3 roots extending below like grasping fingers, the husk sigil, a forbidden mark, a death sentence. They won't ask you about spitting on the cross. That's for the public. In the dark room, with the tools laid out on the table, The inquisitor will lean close, his breath smelling of sour wine, and he will ask you about the real heresy. He will ask you for the names of the others. He will ask you for the location of every hidden library, every safe house. He will whisper the one name he truly fears, the one symbol he must erase from the world, the husk sigil. It is the dark web of its day, a peer-to-peer network for sharing critical intelligence, operating entirely beneath the notice of power. You are a node in that network, a carrier of information. The knowledge you hold, where the new sheriff hangs thieves, which streams are still clean enough to drink from, which woods are haunted by wolves and which by men far worse, if your only currency. You move on, the rain still lashing at you, your body aching with a cold that feels ancient. You need shelter. You need a sign. The soft, wet scrape of your quill against the parchment is the only sound besides the gentle plink, plink, plink of clear liquid dripping into a beaker and the hungry roar of the fire. That sound, that steady dripping, is the heartbeat of a new age, a rhythm no one outside these walls is allowed to hear. The quest for gold is a brilliant deception. It's a story greedy, simple-minded nobles can understand. They pour their coin into this cellar, dreaming of endless wealth. And in doing so, they fund a quiet, world-altering revolution. It's a town, hidden in a hollow, shielded by ancient yews, is a sprawling settlement of at least 50 structures. They are built of wattle and daub, with turf roofs that blend into the forest floor. Smoke curls from a dozen holes in the earth, not from chimneys. It's a society living under the skin of the world. You see a woman tanning an illegal deer hide, her arms stained to the elbow. You see a man with a face branded for heresy, calmly sharpening an axe. Children, thin but alive, chase each other with wooden swords. You dip a linen cloth into a bowl of cooled raspberry leaf tea, the steam ghosting around your chapped knuckles. You place the damp cloth on Ameline's forehead. This is your magic. Not incantations, but infusions. Not pacts with demons, but a deep, forbidden understanding of the deep earth. You know that willow bark can silence a fever. You know that yarrow can staunch the bleeding that carries so many new mothers to their graves. You know the secrets of pennyroyal and tansy, the herbs that give a woman a choice, a voice. What is it you were hiding from the eyes of God? And that was a heresy more dangerous than any religious text. The modern institutional bias against uncredentialed expertise, the automatic dismissal of knowledge that exists outside a certified system. It wasn't born in a boardroom. It was forged in the fire of this conflict, a centuries-old war to maintain control by discrediting any truth that threatened the status quo. What other effective practices, what other life-saving secrets have been deliberately erased to protect the powerful? The scraping stops. The surgeon uses a delicate hook to lift the circle of bone, the rondelle, from the man's skull. 99% of people believe medieval peasants were ignorant, illiterate, and superstitious, living lives of brutal simplicity. That is a deliberate lie, crafted by the powerful to conceal a terrifying truth they buried for centuries. You wake to the smell of damp earth and old wood smoke, the scratch of a straw-stuffed mattress against your skin. The air in your cottage is heavy, thick with a silence that crawls. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in the fog that shrouds the woods. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the brutal, misunderstood reality of the Middle Ages.